Welcome to the third act. My name is Margot Spence, and I'm an in-house lawyer looking to plan my retirement years, or as I think of it, my third act. Everybody looks forward to retirement, a time to do what you want, when you want, a time to travel, pursue hobbies, and enjoy the fruits of your labor. But how do you find meaning in your day-to-day existence? How do you find your purpose and your people? For many professionals, especially lawyers, this can be a daunting transition. After 8 years of training and then many more years refining their craft, lawyers must transition from 40 years of 50-hour work weeks to something. This is especially a challenge for in-house legal counsel who are accustomed to being in the center of big decisions, spending their time analyzing and solving problems, collaborating with others, and engaging with their clients. How does that lifestyle translate to a satisfying retirement? One that provides physical and emotional well-being, intellectual stimulation, collaboration, and meaning. This is the question we will explore on this limited series podcast. On this episode of the third act, we will be chatting with Nick Slonowski. Nick resides in Winnipeg and has been retired for about 5 years. His retirement started right about the time that the COVID virus locked down the world. They say timing is everything. I'm interested in finding out how the lockdown impacted Nick's retirement and how he is able to pivot to find a productive and engaging third act. Nick, thanks for agreeing to be on this podcast.
Well, Margot, thank you very much for having me. And let me say first, I don't want this to be just about me. So congratulations for what you're doing in terms of telling these stories about people who are retiring for the benefit of those who will also retire someday. And of course, we're not retiring from life, we're just retiring from working every day of the week for someone else. So when you're retired, you're focusing more on yourself. But so congratulations for what you're doing. I think it's a wonderful service to others.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm looking forward to figuring this out myself, and I know others are as well. So I'm glad we have the platform to do this. But let's start first with you telling our listeners a bit about your career and brought you to in-house work.
Sure. Well, I've actually always been in-house. When I graduated from university in 1979, I actually articled in-house. I articled for a very large Manitoba Crown Corporation, and I stayed on there and worked there for almost 30 years.
Wow.
And then decided, okay, 30 years is long enough. So I left that entity, and then I ended up deciding that I really wasn't quite ready to retire. So I quickly went back to work, and I worked for another large public company headquartered here in Winnipeg called Investors Group, which is part of the Power Financial Group of companies, for another dozen years. So that's pretty much a great summary of my in-house work in-house for 41 years. With the exception of a break or two, I took a little bit of time off. I went back to school and did graduate studies, but not in law. I actually picked up a Master's of Science in Telecommunications at the University of Colorado College of Engineering and Applied Sciences. And I did that at the same time that I took parental leave, right? Because my wife had a wonderful opportunity to move from Winnipeg to Denver. So we did that. Then we came back. But yeah, so I've been in-house all my career. I wouldn't do it any other way. Every opportunity I have, I tell people, hey, you know what? Go in-house. It gives you a lot of benefits, including a greater freedom than people have in private
For sure.
practice.
Yeah. And what else did you like about in-house? What were the elements of it besides the flexibility?
Yeah, this is going to sound a little cliche, but it's really true. I did like the work, like the scale of work that you do in-house is far more significant than the scale of work you would do as a junior associate in a private law firm. You're given far more responsibility and associated with that a lot of greater expectations as well. So I would say the work was really, really always interesting. I worked for a tech company and a financial services company at times that were significant changes occurring in both those sectors. And so A, it was the work. B, this is going to sound cliche too. Really, the people I had the opportunity to work with just incredibly talented people, not just within our legal departments, but throughout the enterprises as well. If I had to choose one, I enjoyed the work more than the people. And again, this sounds cliche. I really enjoyed the people, right? And
Right.
I think that's a pretty um, common sort of sentiment.
Well, there is that benefit too, like you're embedded in your client, basically.
Yeah.
And so you get to know them almost better than yourself as you go forward.
Well, and you
So
have to keep them happier because you only have one client, right? So,
this is true. Or as I've said to one of my colleagues, when you do the work for one department, know that it's going to come back to haunt you in about 3 or 4 years. So just know when you're working that there's a bigger picture in mind, not just that discrete piece of work. So it sounds like you decided to retire once and then went back. What was the trigger that said now it's really time to retire?
well, I hit a milestone birthday. Like we all have these different milestone birthdays. So my 65th birthday was approaching, and I figured, okay, I've practiced for at that time close to 42 years, and that was long enough under the pension plan, long enough to have done that. And it was the right time to sort of punch out and look at and consider doing other things. And I've never looked back. Like, I wish I actually had retired earlier, right? Because retirement gives you freedom that you really don't have when you're working. Like
Mhm.
it's truly truly freedom, right?
It's interesting because a lot of people who retire say that, but those who are on the cusp of retiring have concerns. So when you were in that point making that decision, did you have any concerns?
Well, that's a good question, Margot. I can honestly say I didn't have any concerns at all. I was ready to retire. You know, most people, I've seen other people retire. They're worried about will they have enough financial resources. In my case, we were very, very fortunate, very, very financially comfortable, healthy. My kids were already adults and had
Mhm.
graduated, and I really looked forward to it. And in fact, so I retired, and my wife decided she wasn't going to. She had an opportunity to continue working for a few years as a result of a corporate transition, and so she stayed on for a little while, and I was retired, and I don't look back. I had no concerns at all, right? My only concern today is why didn't I retire earlier?
Oh, geez. You're lucky then. But did you have a vision? Like, what did retirement look like? You were happy to go, you'd done your thing, you'd had your career, but what was the vision?
You know, it was interesting. When I was working, there were things that I would never be permitted to do, A, or have time to do. I sort of said, well, you know what? When I retire, I'm going to do some things that I didn't have time to do before or wouldn't be allowed to do. And so that was part of my plan. And the other part of the plan was to travel more. Like when you're working, you know, it doesn't matter how many holidays you have, whether it's 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, you usually can't take more than one, or if you're really lucky, it can take two consecutive. And I always came back after a 2 week holiday going, gee, I wish I could just enjoy that a little more, particularly if you're in Winnipeg in the winter. You know,
True.
you go away for a winter holiday, you come back, it's still winter. So yes, did have a plan. The plan included traveling more, doing things that I couldn't do before because of time or other restrictions. I really looked forward to retirement. I was ready.
So you retired in the year that COVID arrived, the pandemic occurred, we all got locked down. So how did that shift things for you?
Well, exactly. I had a great plan of traveling. You're quite correct. I retired in the year that pandemic hit, and the only place I could travel was to Safeway, you know, stand 6 feet apart from other people. Then at some point, not even then. And so that really did impact my plan, as it did everyone's. And if anybody, and your earlier question was, did I have any concerns? Not so much about retirement, but I think everybody during that pandemic period sort of started reflecting. They reflected on their own health, reflected on the importance of family, importance of friends, because there was a period of uncertainty there. So, but it certainly did impact my travel plans. There was no travel, right?
Right. So what did you do then?
Well, what was interesting? Well, it's interesting you asked that because I got contacted by the acting dean of law school. All the law school was shuttered. It was totally closed, and he was looking for an opportunity to give law students in their final year some experiential experience for the simple reason that all law firms were shuttered too. Doors were locked. Everybody was working remotely. It was difficult for students to get any sort of experiential experience. So he had asked if I'd be good enough to sort of help re-envision or reimagine a clinic that existed. And so myself and a actually former colleague, a person I went to law school with, had just retired, as well as the assistant dean there, we put together a virtual clinic that could provide pro bono legal services to people that didn't have a lawyer and couldn't afford legal assistance virtually over the internet. So we had no windows, no doors, no floors, no ceiling, operated totally virtually. And it was a huge clinic. We had like 25% of the graduating class. I think we started with 28 students, and we had lots and lots of clients. It was one good thing. It was really an excellent thing to come out of retirement for, to assist. So that kept me busy. And then I got contacted by different organizations that I had always said no to when they were looking for board members. And I had no excuse. The excuse I used before was, oh no, I wouldn't be allowed to do that because I'm working and I wouldn't have time. And then of course I'd still get those calls and it would be, oh, I understand you're retired. I didn't have an excuse. And it was one of the things I was kind of interested in doing. So I said yes. I said yes to probably a few too many organizations. So today I'm a little bit overboarded, but it was the right thing to do to keep yourself intellectually occupied, and it was great. So it was acting as a mentor. We're giving back to people who couldn't afford services, and the nature of the clinic was small businesses, entrepreneurs, nonprofits, and charities, all who were suffering during that pandemic time. So we launched that clinic right in the middle of the pandemic. What's interesting is when I look back at that and think about it, is we would have never done that had there not been a pandemic, right? So if there's anything good that came out of the pandemic, that was one of the things that I think was kind of interesting. And I'm still involved in that clinical venture. We started in 2021, it's 2024, end of 2024, so 3.5 years later. So still involved in that. It's a lot of fun. There's nothing more stimulating than young law students. You quickly forget how much you know that you didn't think you knew. So it's been very, very rewarding. Yeah. Although I'll have to say this, it does keep me a little bit too busy.
Well, that's a luxury to have, though.
Yeah.
It's nice to be too busy.
Well, and the nice thing about retirement, Margot, is that you have freedom. You have freedom to do only what you want to do, right? So if you don't want to do something, you don't have to do it.
Well, I think part of retirement or shifting or transitioning from full-time work to something is finding a purpose, finding a group of people that you are aligned with or resonate with you, and a community where you feel like you're giving back or creating something that has a lasting legacy. And in this case, your legal clinic has definitely created that legacy.
Well, and it's been so much fun that about a year ago, we started another pro bono legal clinic. So we're involved in two pro bono clinics. If one wasn't enough, two is, twice the amount of joy. So, and that one, it deals with, I'll just put a little plug in for it. It provides
Sure.
legal services to artists and creatives in Manitoba that don't have a lawyer and can't afford legal assistance. I remember telling that to somebody not that long ago, and they said, well, that would be every artist and creative in Manitoba who can afford legal assistance if you're in the creative sector. And but it's very, 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 very rewarding being involved in both these clinics.
So what does a day in retirement look like for you now?
Well, I used to always get up early, right? So that hasn't changed. After 40 years, my biological clock, I have an alarm clock. I always get up before it. So I get up early. It's usually around 6 a.m. I get the paper, read the paper very quickly, check all the good and bad news, and get online, check email and stuff like that, and sort of see what's happening in terms of these clinical things, which take up a lot of time. And then I'm on like all these boards, and the day is full. Like it really is full. In fact, somebody once told me when I was thinking of retiring, "Oh, be careful, you'll never have time to do everything when you're retired." And I was going, what are you talking about? Right. But it's absolutely true. Your day fills up very, very quickly. But again, like I said before, you only do things that you really want to do. Yeah.
Mhm. What would be the next phase of retirement for you if you were to deboard yourself, as you're saying?
What's the next stage? Well, all students, right? We're all students. I teach all these students. Students all graduate. So I think at some point I have to graduate from those clinics too. Make sure that they're healthy enough to continue on their own. So I'm going to graduate from the clinics at some point. I'm overboarded, so I think another part of my current plan is to sort of deboard myself from some of these boards. I'll continue doing that because it's great work, and there's so many. They're all nonprofit boards, so they're all they all have a need. Every nonprofit board should have a lawyer, so I'll continue to do that. But at some point, I'm going to have to sort of transition and retire from that. And then, of course, I think what I'll do is, become a better traveler than I am right now. We've done quite a bit of traveling since COVID restrictions have lifted. So long as you have your health and interest, you know, we've traveled quite a bit over the years. But I think we'll do some more traveling. In fact, we've got some trips planned very soon too. So looking forward to that.
Oh, that sounds good. I was just thinking back to your plan to find a successor for the legal clinic. Maybe it becomes a perpetual transition for newly retired lawyers to move into the clinic and then move on and just have a rotation.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that. It's an ideal role for somebody who's actually in-house or somebody who has more control of their time or retired in-house lawyers because, you don't have all these conflicts, right?
Mhm.
And I find that in-house lawyers retire. I find a lot of my colleagues who are in private practice, they don't know how to retire, so they don't, right? They're still practicing well beyond their best before dates. So one of the things that I couldn't do during COVID was getting together with friends for lunch and stuff. I miss that. I miss that from working. Like, I don't miss putting on weight when I was working by going for lunch, but as a result of COVID, you miss that sort of personal connection. You can only substitute or simulate that so much by having Zoom calls. It's not the same sort of quality sort of event. So, in fact, next week I think I've got personal luncheon dates with some of my actually university colleagues. We usually regularly get together, so look forward to that. The other thing, it's a comparison thing, right? You have more freedom. The one thing I really miss from working for the years and years and years that I worked was I always had assistants. I either had one or two, and I forgot how valuable it is to have somebody assisting you, right? And so I think what I'm going to do very soon, now that I have more time, the time is right. I'm going to track down some of those older assistants of mine. Some of them have retired too, and just remind them because I've reminded myself how much I realized how valuable they are. Right.
So if you were giving tips for the listeners of this podcast on how to plan their retirement or because you had plans, but then the plans derailed, what would you say to them?
Well, first of all, I would say enjoy your retirement. Right. It's limited. Right. We all know that as you get older, your time gets more valuable because you have less of it. So enjoy your retirement. It's wonderful. It provides you with freedom that you have never had. Um, Only do things that you're really interested in doing. But at the same time, I think my advice would be to everyone to, find something you enjoy. But also, yeah, you have to carve out time for yourself, right? Because if you don't, that time will be absorbed by other tasks. So be careful and find time to enjoy time for yourself. And but also, very importantly, we have a lot of skills. By the time in-house lawyers retire, you have a tremendous amount of skills, lots of experience, incredible backgrounds that are very valuable to other organizations. So, get involved in something where you're really truly giving back, whether it's mentoring. The CCCA has a great mentorship program. There's no, you have to be working to be a mentor. You probably have more time to be a mentor when you're not working and have a lot more experience, can be a lot more open. So do some mentoring, whether it's for students or other lawyers in house or others or just people in the community. do find some causes that are dear to you. And, when you retire, you still have a long runway, right? I think these days you have a fairly
Mhm.
long runway. So, use that runway, take off, do some good things. It's not just about yourself personally, but, our communities all have great needs. And I think we can all make great contributions to satisfying some of those needs, which are important, right? And I think somebody told me that the more time you spend bringing joy to others, it's you're commenting earlier about lifestyle and well-being. That is a very healthy thing to do, right? If you're bringing joy to somebody else, that's very healthy for everybody concerned, including yourself. That would be my advice.
Excellent advice. I know I have found doing volunteer work, and it's true, you do get more out of it than you give, even if you give a lot. It's amazing how that works. And it does help with retirement in this case. So you've experienced retirement, you've had this plan. What is the one thing that you know for sure about your third act?
One thing for sure that I know it's going to be the best act, right? It's actually going to be the best act. It'll have a great finale whenever it happens, uh, but it's going to be the best act. I'm a big art supporter. I go to theater all the time, and it's always the end of the show that's the best, right? That's where it all comes together, where all the dots are connected, where the purpose is, like you said, the purpose is really discovered. So I think the third act's going to be the best act yet.
Wow, that's great. I'm so looking forward to this now. And a great analogy to the theater. Nick, thank you for sharing your thoughts, experiences, and guidance on retirement. You've shown us how you were able to adjust and adapt when life put obstacles in your path. Your experience starting your third act is like the adage, when a door closes, a window opens. Your experience is also an example of how responding to a need can open up opportunities that not only add value to others, but are collaborative, creative, and fun. These are all hallmarks of the in-house counsel experience and the foundation for a satisfying third act. Thank you for listening to the third act. The idea for this podcast came about when I was trying to figure out what life after practice was going to look like for me. In doing so, I approached my research in my usual way, asking others for their thoughts and opinions, and checking published resources. I spoke with lawyers and other corporate executives who had just retired or were thinking about retiring. In most cases, when asked, "Now that you're retired, how do you fill your time?" the answers centered around traveling, golfing, pickleball, baking, art, and gardening. All worthwhile endeavors, but definitely not something I knew would keep me engaged for 25 to 30 years. Yes, we have longevity in our family. For the most part, though, the answer was, "I'm not sure. I'm still figuring it out. When you find out, please let me know." My research online proved equally incomplete. Most materials addressing retirement were on financial planning, navigating the medical system, and knowing when to downsize your house. For lawyers in private practice, there are a lot of materials focused on succession planning and wrapping up your business, materials that are not so applicable to in-house legal counsel. Occasionally, though, I would run into lawyers who seemed to have transitioned well, were engaged in their lives, were happy, and looking forward to how their retirement years would unfold. In most cases, though, they refrained from saying the word retired and instead spoke about their next endeavor, a new interest to explore, or challenge to take on. I was still worried about the how. If you didn't have an unfulfilled passion waiting to be explored when the work world was out of the way, then how do you start? The individuals I found and who agreed to be interviewed have all approached this phase of life differently, but there are common themes. Firstly, have a plan. It's never too early to think about this. Figure out what makes you tick. Understand your value system, your purpose, and how you would like to be remembered, be it as a valuable contributor to family or to a wider community. The resources in Linda's interview may be a good start. 2, leverage your networks, which you've created through your practice or volunteer work. Those people can point you in the right direction of opportunities or to new contacts and can have valuable insight into your skills and where you will be a great contributor. The approach taken by Nick, Karen, and Jeff are good examples of this. 3, take steps to adjust your habits. You are no longer working and obliged to do what your employer needs or requires. This adjustment will take some time. Try the 10 things list Scott speaks about. And lastly, don't expect the phone to ring. The creation and design of your next act requires action on your part. Once that action starts, the phone will start to ring. Join new communities, reach out to others, and apply for positions, be they volunteer or paid, that you're interested in and match your experience and skills. You may not get them all, but it will be a good start. Given the interest of my colleagues and friends in my quest, I realized that the lessons I was learning needed to be communicated to a broader audience, hence the podcast. I soon discovered, though, that having an idea and bringing it to fruition takes the support of many. I've been a long-time volunteer and supporter of the work of the Canadian Corporate Counsel Association. Having served on its board and as chair during the pandemic, I thought that this podcast could serve the membership well. They agreed and have created the platform for the delivery of the podcast. Dr. Wilson Kwong of Inspired Dental also thought the project had merit and agreed to be a sponsor, enabling the podcast to be accessible to non-CBA members. Inspired Dental has offices at Oak Ridge Centre in Vancouver and downtown Vancouver, and was founded and grown by Dr. Wilson Kwong on the principles of trust, integrity, customer service, and clinical prowess. From my personal experience, Dr. Kwong delivers on these principles every day. So with the platform and funding in hand, the interview subjects lined up, the podcast photo obtained with the courtesy of the photographer Etienne Fonek, along with the guidance from Adam Brownfield, Sasha Vanderhesch, and the technical assistance of Alex Worden, a webcast guru, the podcast was born. Now that this series is complete, I need to sit down and do the work to create my own plan, something I'm now looking forward to instead of dreading. The last lesson I learned from creating this podcast is that creating your third act is an ever-evolving process. Your life plan will probably change between year 1, year 10, and again by year 20 of your retirement years. But in the end, it's the journey that brings fulfillment and engagement. Thanks for listening, and good luck with creating your third act.